guys, welcome to Kenganda. My name is Janita Maya and I do have a guest right here. Please introduce yourself to our viewers.
Hi guys, my name is Shakir J0 I'm a film director and a photographer based in London.
Yeah.
I'm currently in Uganda right now.
Thank you. Now, I recently read an article that's titled How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney. And when I saw it, I thought of you because we've been talking. And I was like, you know what? Shaq could be a great add to this article. When you hear the title, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, what comes to your mind?
There's many things, the first thing we have to look at is why did Europe want to come to Africa?
Oh, why?
So
no one ever asks that.
Exactly. So we first have to start off at looking at, civilization. We need to start out and look at like where things were starting. At first, things were happening in Africa. Some scholars even say that, it was a lot of, there's a big transition between the Africans and the Europeans. Things started changing between the 10th century. The Moors came from Africa and they went to Europe. Some people don't like saying it, but there's books out there and there's papers out there that state that the Moors were in Europe and they helped a lot of things that, that happen in Europe. That's where the ideas now start coming for like the Europeans to come to Africa, because the Portuguese were the first people to come to Africa. That's where the desire now comes from, and now the Europeans are coming to Africa and starting seeing us as commodities. That's the first thing we have to ask ourselves, is that why did the Europeans want to come to Africa? Because they were calling Africa the Dark Continent. Those Moors that came out to Europe, they taught many things to the Europeans. So now there's a need. But at the same time now, if we take things forward into like it was, I would say, when the Berlin Conference occurred, now that's when the scramble of Africa happened. And that's when, the Western countries, wanted to, split Africa like a cake. But like that Berlin Conference, there was no Africans there. It was just Europeans. Deciding the future of our lives. That scramble of Africa it's one thing that doesn't really get spoken about in history. Because all the problems that we're facing right now comes from that meeting. Growing up in London, you look at the map, we see Africa, we see how there's grids and it's split up, but there was a map before pre-colonial Africa.
Yes.
And it annoyed me in school that these things were not taught. They say history gets taught by the conqueror. There's a lot of things that I'm speaking of now. I had to learn these things, I believe, from 18 to 21 now. That's when I was educating myself about pre-colonial Africa and how things came to be. There's a lot of things that are hidden. They always say like, just put things in a book because black people don't like read it. But it's like, it's the truth. Because a lot of the films, a lot of the things we watch, they're coming from somewhere. Someone was writing this information. Because, if you look at it, the train systems that were built in Uganda, they're all built by the British. You know what I mean? So it's like, and why were they built? Because they're exporting what? A commodity. We have to look into these things, because they were the first people. They came here. They built a lot of the houses. I even read, correct me if I'm wrong, someone was watching, I read that it was a German architect who designed Kampala.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
They already, created an atmosphere for us that we're living in right now.
Yeah.
And so whenever people speak about how did the Europeans, underdevelop Africa, they don't speak about these things.
True.
They just go straight into racism, but racism, it was baked in to the system, when they were doing the colonialism and imperialism. In the West, a lot of the countries got colonized.
Yeah.
Whereas for us in East, we got imperialized. And people don't even speak about people don't speak about these things. They always just stick on that one narrative. Because yes, it is true. There were some leaders from our communities who were selling off our people. Because they always bring that argument up.
Yes.
They love bringing that argument up.
Yes.
They love bringing that argument. However, there was a lot of betrayal. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So for us as black people, I always say we first have to look at the education of post-colonialism and pre-colonialism. Because there's two sides of the story. Because we get taught post-colonialism. So I think as black people, we need to look into that. In the West where I grew up, there's people who came from the West, right? And then they got shipped off to the Caribbeans and America, and they didn't get their last name, And we don't know how that can damage us psychologically. You know, you don't know how it feels like to not have your last name. If when your last name is Stephen, you know, Sterling, we don't know how that feels like. I mean, a lot of us in East Africa, we have our family name. So there's so many things that go into the whole question of how did Europe underdevelop Africa? Because it's still happening today. You know, they underdeveloped us psychologically, mentally, and physically. And the psychological part right now is happening right now through media. That's why, that's another thing why I'm a filmmaker, is because there's so many, like, the narrative of how we see ourselves. You know, they make us feel inferior. We don't know it, but it happens. That's why we have, we have like America and California, like one of the biggest export is, culture. They export the culture out to the world. We don't realize how big, media is. That's why you see, the Indians have their own version of Hollywood. The Nigerians have Nollywood. The Chinese have their own version of their films.
K-drama.
Exactly.
That's great.
Whereas, whereas for us, we just take on the exports, the films they have of us. Sometimes the films are coming from post-colonialism stories, slavery stories, how the protagonist ran away, how the protagonist fell in love with the
slave's daughter or something.
And yes, we're showing black characters, but what type of story is it telling of us? And who's writing these stories? Who's directing? Who's telling these stories? We don't realize as artists that we mold culture. That's why you have to look at civilization from the beginning and look at who were the people that were molding the culture. That's why I say, like, although Europe has underdeveloped Africa and there's a big influence from the Western world on Africa, us having access to the internet, MBs and Wi-Fi allows us to educate ourselves. A lot of us, we like to complain, we like to, point fingers, but we have the phone in our hand and we have the internet as well. If we just teach ourselves how to research and search for things and how to think for yourself, it's a better opportunity for us. But yeah, so that's what I would say. As long there's definitely, Europe has definitely underdeveloped Africa. It's still happening now, but there is solutions.
Yeah.
Right now, in the West, there's a big thing happening with with women now saying they just don't want to cancel the man. They don't want the man anymore because of just how they were raised. You know what I mean? They don't see the black man as this king that was, told about in previous stories. There's just things where, people are choosing their own identities. There's a lot of things happening, and I remember I was there and I was like, wow, man, these are real times we're in right now. If you don't know who you are, someone will tell you who you are. And also these films, they say the creators in the diaspora, we need to think about like what type of narratives we want to create. Like how are we going to counter this media that's been put on us? Because like there is many things that we can do to help. It's not going to happen overnight, but the fact that we have the internet, there is hope.
Definitely. Oh, you said so many powerful things. I'm not done. I'm like, I need to go make research on this, or I need to go make research on that. Tell the people how they can reach you or get to you if they want to reach out.
You can find me on IG, Instagram, A1 Illustration.
Yeah.
You can find I also have a website called a1illustration.co.uk.
Which is amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's it, man. And I'm here in Uganda. So if you want to connect, let me know.
Thank you so much once again, guys. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all our social media platforms at Kenganda Nation. My name is Janita Maya. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.